Hello, everyone. Happy Friday. Welcome to the weekly show of What is School For? What a great question. My name is I'm the CEO of Classroom Without Walls and the host of this weekly live streaming show. You can also listen to us on the traditional audio-only podcast. Just search What is School For? On this show, I interview parents, teachers, education leaders, students, homeschooler, traditional students, entrepreneurs, and business leaders to come here. We discuss, debate, and disrupt education. The goal is to future-proof the next generation. Today, I'm really excited to have my friend Katie Gibbons on the show to talk about her journey as a homeschooling mom. And Katie has been homeschooling her two boys for a few years. And so we're going to discuss the pros, the cons, challenges. Do you have to be a teacher in order to homeschool your children? And what are some challenges you have to overcome? Curriculum to use, resources and tips. And also, Katie actually has almost 20 years of experience in the banking industry. And after she closed that chapter, she became a financial coach. So we're also going to tap into her zone of genius to talk about financial literacy. And this is something I think is absolutely missing in the current education curriculum. So how can we as parents cultivate our own financial literacy and how we can help our children to become wiser and smarter with using budgeting and managing their own money. So really excited for today's interview. If you are still on the fence, you don't know if homeschooling is for you or not, this episode is for you. As always, a big shout out to StreamYard. And over the last several years and last 4 years, and I have tried almost all the third-party tools to go live. StreamYard is my favorite third-party tool. So really thankful for StreamYard for being a sponsor of Classroom Without Walls. So in the chat box, there is a discount code for you to check out StreamYard for free for 2 weeks. Check it out and send me a message if you have any questions. We're live on Facebook, on LinkedIn, on YouTube, on Periscope, on Twitch. Let me know, everyone, where you guys are joining us live from, social media-wise and geographically speaking. Without any further ado, Katie, welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you so much. I am so honored to be here. I feel like we scheduled this some time ago and March seemed far away, but here we are at the end of March and end of the first quarter of 2021. It's exciting.
I know, so exciting. I mean, like, for those of you who have been following me for some time, you know that I also homeschool our own children together with my husband. So this is something so close and dear to my heart. So I have been waiting for this interview for quite some time. So let's get started, Katie. And I interview quite a few homeschooling parents on the show and also in my personal life. So everyone seems to have a different reason to start this journey. So what is your story and what is your reason to become a homeschooling mom, to decide to homeschool your children?
Yeah, so if you'd have told me in 2018 that I would be homeschooling today, that I would no longer be in banking, that I'd be homeschooling, I would have said you were absolutely out of your mind. But we had quite a journey with my youngest son, who is now 11 years old. And that journey started very early when we tended to bounce daycare to daycare, elementary school to elementary school, when he was struggling in the school setting. And after a lot of money spent, a lot of fighting with the school system to try to get his accommodations and to get him what he needed, I felt this strong push, call, nudge, whatever you want to call it, voice from God, whatever that higher power is for you. For me, it was that Holy Spirit kind of intervening to say, your child needs you. At the end of the day, we would sit in these rooms with educators, administrators, psychologists, professionals in the school environment. And they would look to me and my husband and say, how do we help your kid in the classroom? So I felt like every year I was constantly having to retrain his group of teachers how to care for him in the classroom. And he's got some learning disabilities. He's got some behavioral challenges. And so I finally just said, you know what? I'm tired of teaching everyone else how to do it. I'm just going to do what I'm feeling called to do and go all in with homeschooling. So here I am.
Wow, that's incredible. We're definitely going to dive into the journey. I mean, you guys started in 2019, so it has been almost, definitely more than 2 years. So like, if you don't mind sharing with us, I actually read a few of your Facebook posts. You were openly sharing and talking about spend so much time, energy fighting against a bureaucratic system. And I have a very cynical view on education myself. So if you don't mind sharing with us, if you can still recall, so what are some of the specific challenges about the system that you have to fight so hard against? So can you be a little bit more specific with us?
Sure. I'll first start off with saying that I know and love a lot of teachers. And I don't really believe that this is an issue with teachers in the classroom. I believe that this is an issue with the system, the education system as a whole. And I believe that teachers really, really are there to do their heart's work, and that is to love on children and to educate children. I think the issue is, much like healthcare as we see today, that there is less and less opportunities for teachers to really pour into children the way that they need to, because they push a lot of paperwork. You see that in the healthcare industry. Doctors and nurses are further and further removed from the patient because of the paperwork and the hassle and the checking the box, right? And so I think teachers are under the same type of challenges. And so there's got to be a lot of documentation about what children need if they have special needs in the classroom. So as a parent, you're constantly having to make sure that you have all the testing, that you've outlined all the accommodations, that it's in writing, that it's been proven to work, that there's enough staff to implement what's in your child's plan. And at the end of the day, children need help right now. Right now in the classroom, there are kids who need adults to really intervene. And if there's not paperwork present, if there's not accommodations already agreed upon, if there's not these large committee meetings, that child can't get the care that they need immediately. And that's what we found with our own son, who would have major meltdowns in the classroom, who was actually fleeing and running away from the school. And, children who act out in that way really are asking for help in a very inefficient manner, right? And we just felt like it was getting to a critical mass for us, that we needed to bring him home, that he needed a lot of connection, a lot of self-esteem and confidence building, and that until we could get him in a safe place to learn, and by safe, I mean a safe space that he valued as a safe space, then he wasn't ever really going to be able to learn and connect with the whole idea of school and education. And that was really, really important to us.
Yeah, definitely. And I hear you. And even just myself, I mentioned this quite a few times. I felt like before I resigned from my teaching position, 70% of what I do was to perpetuate the system, right? Like exams, like standardized exam, quizzes, all those things, the books, and even the way that I'm teaching, the curriculum. And nowadays, I even heard from some of my friends, I don't know how common it is in the United States, that they actually have to, like even in higher education, the teachers have to submit their lesson plan in advance and for approval before they can teach the class. I was like, wow, that is awful. And I had a conversation with a lawyer, and she said that she wanted to practice law because she wanted to help people. But quickly she discovered being a lawyer was actually also to perpetuate the system. She's moving further and further away from the common people that she wanted to help. So it is so interesting to hear and see all the parallels in different industries. Yeah. And as a mom, seeing that. And so you have been homeschooling your children. You guys started in 2019, and you mentioned that earlier. It is a tough decision to make. I still remember the day when my husband and I decided to homeschool our kids, we're like, can we even do this, right? It's not a tough decision. You talked about this in one of your blog articles, which I'm going to share in the comment section. And a common perception or misperception that parents have is that I'm not a teacher. I don't have a teacher's background. I don't have the training. I feel unqualified to homeschool our own kids. So what do you say to those people? When you started homeschooling a few years ago, did you have the same fear or concern? How did you overcome that?
Yeah, so I did. So there was a lot, I met this with a lot of fear. And honestly, I think when you get a nudge or called to do something that's very much out of your comfort zone, it's very normal to feel confusion and fear and what if, and are we doing, are we doing the right thing? Is this the right thing? For me, I felt like, and over time, what got me more comfortable and kind of out of that fear was that I am very well equipped to parent my own child. We all are uniquely equipped to parent the child that we've been given. And I believe that we think that parenting has a place. I think society tells us parenting has a place, and then school has a place. And maybe those things shouldn't necessarily overlap. And as parents, we were sending our children to school, and that's where they learned everything they needed to know. And then when they came home and we got home from our traditional jobs, then we could love on them and do all the extracurricular. And that somehow learning stopped at 3 p.m. when the school bell rang, right?
Amen.
Yeah. And so, once we had to have a little bit of a mind shift that learning is continuous. It happens in the classroom. It happens at home. It happens wherever you are, wherever your children are, learning is taking place. And so that took a little bit of pressure off of me. Also, I think a lot of times the misconception is that if you think about, as a parent, you have brought that child from infancy to school age. You have taught them a lot, how to walk and talk and feed themselves and tie their shoes. And some parents have taught a second language to the child or to read. And suddenly when they turn 5 or they're school age, then parents are dumb. They don't know anything. They don't know how to teach a child, and the school can do it a whole lot better. And I think that's misconceptions. And I think that's a little bit of a myth. And, I kind of just felt really strong in my decision to say, I am capable. And in the areas that I'm not capable, we're going to find the person, the people, the organization to help come alongside us. We're going to outsource that piece of it. I mean, I have a child going into high school, right? The thought of having to teach him physics at some point, I'm not going to be his physics teacher. I'm going to find a way, a curriculum, a path, and we're going to get that to him. I am the lead learner in the home. I'm not necessarily the lead teacher. So I think that's really kind of important to decipher that I'm not trying to create a classroom at home. I mean, right now I'm sitting in what we call our schoolroom, but it is never my intention to make public school appear in my home. That's not how we have chosen to do it.
Wow, I can resonate so much with you. I mean, just last night, my husband and I were observing and making a point, a very similar point. So about 9 p.m., I don't know what happened. Both of my boys, they just felt this urge of inspiration to start creating and doing some stories. And it is such a big difference between, as you mentioned earlier, traditional students, when they go to school, they think that learning only happens in school. When they come back home, either they go to some prep classes, or it's their free time doing whatever they want. But for homeschooling kids, that's what I noticed in my own kids, is that every moment, the life is their teacher. Life is their classroom. They don't feel like, wow, this is my free time. I don't want to learn. They don't even see that distinction. Every little thing can be an inspiration for them to start doing something, enjoying or creating. Even at 9 p.m., just it's so enjoyable to see that. And they are just on their own creating and doing things. So I love that. And it's so nice to hear that from you. And you see that in your own children. It's you shared, right? And you said that I think both of your kids, or maybe one of them, said that, wow, mom, I'm actually learning a lot more and being at home than going to school, right?
Yes, he did. That was my current middle school son. He told me, in the year, over the last year, he feels like he's actually learned more than he's learned in school altogether. And I asked him, why do you think that? And what do you, and what he shared, and what I know to be true too, based on, kind of our philosophy in homeschooling, is that he is motivated to learn, right? Children have a natural capacity and curiosity to learn, and they are naturally motivated. Aren't we all, as human beings, naturally motivated to learn the things we want to learn? So I feel like we put in the traditional education system, we push a boxed curriculum. We pushed a one size fits all. We tell children, you have to learn this, you have to master this. We're going to check it on a test. This is the standard. And so a lot of times children just don't have the ability to really dive in to learn the things that interest them the most. And I think that's what homeschool gives our family. I think it's why people are kind of coming on board to the idea, is that you really can tailor education for your specific learner. You can tap into their learning styles, to what interests them. And when they have that ownership, and when you're teaching it in a way that they can receive it well, they learn more. And that is what he is experiencing, that he feels like his knowledge has grown. And for me as a parent, it's wonderful, right? It rings my bell. But we want to make sure, and it's our mission for our homeschool, that we create lovers of learning forever. That they know that they never stop learning. That just because they leave their education formative years, that there is a passion and a drive to learn forever. And that's what we try to model in our home. And those are the conversations that we're having during our homeschool time.
I love it. I love it. Yeah, I love you before. Now I just love you even more.
Thank you.
So much with me. Yeah, I love this point from Phil. Like even in the medicine industry, and we're just talking about how what we were doing was just like perpetuating the system. And one of my favorite statement regarding the medicine is 70% of what we eat is to keep the doctor alive. 30% is to keep us alive, which is really interesting. But anyway, and so we got some really great comments here. So here is from, I think, Andy. Thank you for joining us live. And he said that he was homeschooled as a teenager in the 90s. When it was called, that's so funny.
Yes, we really do. The homeschool parents of today really owe a debt of gratitude for those that have come before us. In the 70s, 80s, I think in some states, even into the 90s, homeschooling was illegal, and truancy officers would pick your kids up. And so, to say thank you for those parents that fought for it, that did it, that stuck it out, that we have this incredible opportunity. I know the homeschool community holds really tight to that. For the state, in every state's laws are different. State law is actually what governs the homeschool requirements for you. So I am in the state of Texas, which is a wonderful state to homeschool in. And basically, when I removed my children from the public school, I wrote saying that I agreed that I would teach them, 4 basic areas: math, writing, and good citizenship, reading, right? And so after that, we go about our business. So we owe that debt of gratitude to those that have come before us, and it's really chosen this when it was absolutely not the popular thing to do. It was not popular for many, many years. I think, as you actually shared with me, that in the last year, the numbers of homeschoolers have doubled in the United States. And so I think as people like you and others begin to just really talk about that and open the conversation about what is going on in the education system, I think you're going to have more people kind of coming to this idea that there are other ways, right? It's just one way. If it works for you and your family, I'm not here to change your mind. But if it's not working for you, knowing that there is another way is extremely helpful for parents who are on the fence.
Amen. There's another way. There's a better way. I mean, just even my own kids, and they're a lot younger than your children, but my 9 years old, I noticed substantial changes in him after we started homeschooling him. One big change is motivation. It is so fascinating that you said that children, they are naturally motivated to do something. Besides my own kids, my own school, I also work with older kids. One big challenge concerning so many parents, especially teenagers, high school, college age students, is that my kid is not motivated to do anything. They are just so indifferent to life. They're so disengaged from life. But then here we are listening to you talking about children are naturally motivated. What a sharp difference. I truly believe it is the formal education that is like slowly killing that motivation. Do you see that? Or
I do. I see it, and it's really sad. I was asked to be on an advisory panel when my children were still in the public school, and I was asked to be on an advisory panel about kind of introducing social emotional learning, right? And so there were a lot of surveys done about, for teachers and for children about the social emotional aspects, and are they getting what they need? I would love to rattle off all of the numbers, but the gist of it was children feel very disconnected at school. They feel they have low self-esteem. They have a lot of anxiety. We're seeing a lot of mental health. Even pre-pandemic, we were seeing a lot of mental health in the schools, younger and younger and younger. And what is really, really sad was that when teachers were polled and surveyed, those teachers said that they did not feel equipped to teach social emotional skills to their class. And so what a far gap and very far away are those two situations. And this is the place where teachers and students are meeting. Teachers feel like they're not prepared. There's not enough adequate training. Students feel alone and abandoned and anxious, and so in that environment, how can we expect children to be motivated? It would be a very, very hard thing to do. As you know, in what you've studied, is that when those basic psychological needs are met in Maslow's hierarchy of needs, when a child feels safe and secure and connected and loved and appreciated and valued, then they can reach a higher level of learning. But in the school system, I think we're failing students by not even reaching that basic human connection.
Yeah, I mean, this is powerful. And you are talking about Maslow's law. I actually recently I learned from a webinar. Even now, there are like educators, there are people who are redesigning Maslow's law, which is they make it like traditionally it's a triangle shape. Now they make it into a circle shape. So the core is actually connection bonding. So like learning, like the higher needs cannot be met without that bonding, without that sense of security. And when I heard that, I was just thinking about my own kids when I was nursing them when they were babies, and how both of them would starve themselves. Like, they refused to eat from strangers, even though there's milk there, but they both waited until I came back home to nurse them. So I was like, wow, that bonding is so important. But very few kids, you are so spot on, Katie. Very few kids actually felt that way in this very stressful environment, detached, not connected with their teachers in large classes. So I definitely hear you on that. Yeah.
And so the difference is in a homeschool environment where they're with mom, dad, guardians, whomever is in the home, they can feel that safety and that security net is there automatically. They're in a very easygoing environment, and they can just absorb all of what we're learning. And they're getting a very tailored experience, and it's one-on-one. It's one-on-one. I mean, don't you love when, even as an adult, when you start a new job and someone sits with you and teaches you and trains you in your new position? Don't you get that so much better and faster than sitting in a classroom with 20 other newbies that are starting, in the workplace, and you're all being trained one way, and you all just kind of have to get what you can get? Isn't it so much better and feels so much better, and you feel so much more successful when you can have someone right there with you, showing you and guiding you and modeling for you.
Amen.
And so that's, children are humans. They are just little people. And I think sometimes we expect out of them what we would not accept for ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where that's where homeschool can really be such a beautiful option.
Yeah, I mean, I used to run my programs as a group program, and then I discovered I was changing lives, but like I can definitely do better. So now I do everything one-on-one. Learning has to be personal. It is like, the perfect approach, especially with parents. You really know the kids. And I think you were talking about one size fits all, and someone was also commenting about that in the chat box. And I noticed that in my own kids, how they all learn like so differently, right? From the same parents. My 6 years old, he just loves math. We're almost done with the first grade level. And by my 9 years old, he just loves reading like literature. He's so advanced in terms of his vocabulary, but he's not that into math. It is so interesting. We can like for one subject, we're using the first grade, for example, and then for another subject for the same kid, we're using the second grade level. But you can't do that in the traditional school environment. You can really customize that with you for your own kids. So I really, really love that freedom. Yeah. Here's a great comment from Alice. Now being pandemic, even us, there are different ways to learn, different opportunities to learn. And I so agree. It is even more so for the kids. So going back, I want to circle back to what you mentioned earlier. So when you decided to homeschool your kids, you actually shared in one Facebook post that you said that the middle school system is actually failing your son in terms of the social emotional needs. So can you kind of elaborate on that? Maybe give us like some examples. Yeah, what you mean?
Yeah, sure. So, initially we just pulled out my younger son. And because we felt like my older one, who was in the middle school at the time, he kind of was one of those kids that would be successful anywhere. Very smart, very bright, loving, good kid, right? Good kid. And he started sixth grade, and we really started seeing some changes in him. We started seeing anxiety come up for him that we had not witnessed from him before, missing assignments, falling back, scaling back. And, that was starting to be very concerning to us, kind of out of character. Now, society would tell you, that's just part of growing up, and we send them on their way because, as a parent, I wasn't really involved with his education. I didn't know when the assignments were due. I didn't know. All of that communication happens between the student and the teachers. And don't get me wrong, I believe students need to be independent, and we need to push them kind of out of the nest. But what was happening was he was falling back. He didn't know how to ask for help. He didn't realize he needed help. He didn't have very, crucial skills that kids who are independent need, like time management, coping strategies when things get overwhelming. So those are those social emotional skills that no one had really prepared him for. I kind of thought school was taking care of that. I'm sure the school system was thinking mom and dad's taking care of that. And what ends up happening is that the child just never gets taught how to cope and kind of deal with life in a transition. I mean, changing from elementary to middle school is a big transition. And it's almost like, again, there just wasn't enough of that safety there, that good security that kids need to learn and to be successful.
Yeah, I love that. Which just reminds me of this post. I will share my screen real quick. And someone actually quite a few of my friends actually tagged me on this post from Louis House. And most of you probably know this guy. If not, you should definitely follow him. And this is so powerful. He said that things we learn in school, right? How to write, read, memorize, and how to take like tests, quizzes, exam, I would also love to add, how to listen to the teacher, how to be obedient, all those things. But what he wishes that he actually learned while he was at school was, this is exactly what you were talking about, Katie, right? How to embrace failure, managing our own emotions, the social emotional aspect, and how to believe in yourself. Most kids out of the system, they have so little self-confidence, right? And
I tell my friends, who say, "Oh, I'm not a teacher. I could never do that." Well, I wasn't a teacher either. I was in the banking industry for 20 years. But I said, I'm not so much in the teaching business as I am in the confidence building business.
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
in the confidence building business, right?
I love that. I love that. I love that. Here he said, how to stay motivated is such a big factor among kids today, like especially as they grow older. And so besides the social emotional aspect, are there some other red flags that you notice? Like I think you shared with me that when you just started homeschooling your kids, there are so many skills that you have to reteach them. So what are some of those skills that you have to reteach your kids?
Yeah. So time management was a big one.
Mm,
Managing time, not waiting for someone to tell you what to do next, right? Taking ownership of your own work, basic life skills. So for us, our children now, they make their own lunch, right?
mm,
But my middle school child could not kind of get it all together to
mm,
make his lunch, to know when to wake up, it was like you said, always wanting to know, what do I do next?
mm,
Waiting for someone to tell them what to do.
mm,
And communication skills was a big piece of it. Like, someone's talking to you, you need to talk back. Just that two-way complete feedback loop of communication. And because rightfully so. I mean, kids are told in school that you sit there, you be quiet, you don't talk, you listen to the teacher, you get your work done, everyone's quiet. And so I feel like they were just kind of programmed to just be obedient. Don't make the teacher mad. Don't, just do what you're told. And, when we first started with my older son, he said, if he'd get a problem wrong or we'd be working on something, he felt like such a failure. I got it wrong. I mean, what's my grade going to be? Right? So focused on grades, so focused on performance. And I said, wait. This is about learning. Did you learn the concept? Have we built a good foundation so that as we continue to learn algebra, that you're going to be able to continue to build on those skills? But he was so taught to the test. Did I get an A? And that was heartbreaking to try to deprogram that way of thinking.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, totally deprogramming. They are like almost on autopilot, right? Like, it is so interesting. I think that's why children have lots of knowledge gaps, right? Because they're only looking at their grade. Oh, my grade is fine, I pass this. They don't really go back to the questions. They don't even know the answers yet and work those questions out and actually learn for the sake of learning. They just, oh, I passed it, I go to the next level. But they never look at the gaps, throughout their learning journey. Yeah, I so agree. And then if they get a good grade, like, yeah, if they get a bad grade,
and doesn't society honor that and put that on a stage? And you're either a good student and you make good grades, or you're a bad student, right? And so a lot of times you've got these children who have incredible gifts and talent, creativity and empathy and lovely people. And they are in a system where they're told you're not quite good enough. And then we put them out in the world. And what has the world lost because of that? They've lost incredibly intelligent, creative, problem-solving students who don't believe in themselves and never possibly could reach their highest potential.
I mean, like what you said just reminds me of my conversation with Dr. Sonia Luther a few weeks ago. She specializes in studying children who attend high achieving schools. And those are the kids who are really like straight A plus, very good students. And they have so many mental health, like confidence, so many issues. And like, if you guys missed that interview, you should definitely check out. It's like resonated.
I watched it. It was wonderful. Yeah, she was speaking my language for sure.
Yeah, definitely resonate with what you are talking about here. Like now feeling confident, all those things. So we have so many great questions from our live audience. Thank you so much, everyone. So Alice, she asked, clearly, right? You can see that both Katie and I, we are advocates for homeschooling. So why do you think homeschooling has so much resistance?
Yeah, I think, I think it's sort of mysterious. So I think there's a lot of resistance when things are mysterious. Traditionally, I don't think homeschool parents, we've not had the opportunity to get on calls and do live streams and really, dive in to see what's happening with these students, right? No one's really, I don't think, ever studied them and tracked them, at least to my knowledge. We're not talking about it. It's just not been popular. I think we're going to see that change. Mm-hmm. Also, I believe that, my generation, and I'm a Generation Xer, I think that we believe that what's happening in the schools currently is the way it was when we were in school. Mm. And I think we need to come to terms with the fact that the schoolhouse and the education system has changed since we were there. Mm. And so if you have this feeling of nostalgia about school, because school was a wonderful place for me, I enjoyed going to school, right? Then you are thinking your child's having the same experience. And I would just challenge that, because I think we're seeing that they are not having the same school experience that we had when we were in school, in a different decade or even a different century for many of us. So I think that's one reason. I think the other reason is that people believe that homeschooled children are being, protected, that we stay at home. Who wants to stay at home with their kids all day? I think the question comes up about socialization. How are they being socialized? I believe our beliefs are that the only way to socialize children is at school. And we can talk about that. I don't.
We already see a question related to that, and we're definitely going to talk about that.
Yeah. So let's talk about socialization, because that's a question that I get asked often when I tell people that I homeschool. They're like, "Oh, what about socialization? If my children are around and they're playing really well with other children," I say, "Well, do they look unsocial to you?" Socialization, or socializing by definition, is the activity of interacting with people in society. Okay. Mm-hmm. So the classroom model gives you one socialization method. You have 25 students in a class and one adult. Now, where in life are we with all of our peers, people that are the same age as us, and one other adult in a room? That's not really real world socializing, in my opinion. So real world socializing is being able to interact with all people, all ages, all demographics, all walks of life. That is the essence of socialization. And so guess what? Homeschool kids, we eat out for lunch. We go to the grocery store. We have music lessons during the day. We get together with our other homeschool families. They're on sports teams. They're on swim teams. We're at church. There's youth groups. My children very much know how to socialize with a baby in the room and with an 80-year-old grandparent. So I think that we are kidding ourselves when we think that the only place to socialize is at school.
I love that. And just reminds me, and so I think it was last year, I interviewed the parents of a kid who started Brandon Agronoff. He started his business when he was only 13, designing socks, and grow that into a 7-figure business by the time he was 17, and got featured in CNN, like NBC, quite a few, and Forbes, all those different places. So I interviewed the parents. I asked them, what's the secret? What's the secret? And the number one secret they shared with me is mixed age learning. Mixed age learning. That is exactly what you are talking about here. And also reminds me of a book I read a few years ago. I forgot the title of the book, but the dad, he's a very successful entrepreneur. He has quite a few kids, and all of them are very successful in life. And he shared that the reason that his kids are all successful was because one of the factors was that he actually took his children to all of his daily activities, like meetings, going to the bank, and talking, socializing. So I saw, great. I think the school environment is a very artificially constructed, safe environment. And you are actually only practicing socializing skills with your peers. But in real life, this mixed generation model, I think so much more powerful. And I see that in both of my kids, how their social skills have actually improved as a result of this, intergenerational, different activities. And so that is definitely a misperception. Many parents and many educators don't even see that. So thank you so much for sharing that with us. Very, very powerful.
Yeah. And look, it is. And I guess it's just a way that that we can start to reframe what that looks like. And I think that's why having the conversation is very important. So I love when I'm asked that question, right? Because it gives me an opportunity, because people say, well, don't you care about socialization? Absolutely. I care about it a lot.
I mean, yes. Actually, there are studies that have shown that college graduates, 70 or 75% of college graduates do not have soft skills such as communication, right?
Yeah.
So they are mainly have been socialized in this artificial environment. Yeah, I so agree. So if we can, like, I met students like that all the time. If they are talking to a stranger, they're not very familiar with it, they become so shy, right? They don't know how to talk,
Right.
how to ask questions. Not to even mention people from different countries with different accents. It's just like, oh, yeah. So here's another great question from Pooja, based in India. Thank you for joining us live, my friend. I missed you for a few weeks. So she said that she has a brother who really loves gaming, but now he's in 10th grade, which is considered a really important one in India. And her parents want him to score higher as much, go higher. So can you suggest some tips that she can help him make a balance between his like passion as a gamer and studies?
Yeah. So my son, who is 13, loves gaming as well. Of course, we have to have him create healthy boundaries with gaming. And so, we use gaming as a currency, because all children have a currency and what they're striving for. And so, that's the big question about how do you balance technology with learning, and kids just want to be, do it. We know what it does to the brain as kids are gaming. Research is showing us the dopamine and all the endorphins that are rushing through their brains. And so I would say, what we do here, and again, I'm not an expert, but it's what works for us, is trying to kind of find ways, as that brain and that mindset, that mentality of gaming, there's a learning style that's in that, right? And if we can figure out his learning style, you can change the way that you're teaching the material that's adaptive to his learning style. So I think the gaming gives us a clue about how those children like to be engaged and how they like to learn. And I think that we can draw from that and then teach material in a way that that plugs into that, if that makes any sense.
Yeah,
and totally. And I don't think you can totally take it away. I mean, look, there's a cybersecurity company that they are looking for kids who are gamers. They want those kids graduated from high school into the cybersecurity industry, because that is what they're looking for to work for them. And they're like, just come and we'll teach you, right? In your books, skip the degree and save the tuition. Here's an industry that they're going to pull those kids who love the computer and love the gaming, and they're going to be able to give them a trade and teach them and train them to do very high skilled cybersecurity work. So I think that, we want to bash gaming and we want to bash the electronics. And while they definitely need their place, and we need to teach kids about boundaries and making sure that they're doing those things in moderation, we also can see it as a gift if we choose to.
Amen. Definitely. I mean, gaming is a legit career, right? I personally know friends who are making a good living doing like gaming, playing YouTube videos, doing gaming or game design, like coding. Like I feel like if I were you, Pooja, I would really do some research to identify even like potential careers and for people who are really into gaming, and to see like what do I need to do in order to do this, kind of reverse engineer to design like a way to get there and to pursue that as a career, where it's like your career is based on something you are interested in. Like for my own kids, they love Minecraft, and so every time, a few weeks ago, my 9-year-old, he was really into history. He was doing D-Day, so we did a number of projects, a written project, and using Canva to do a presentation, and he also did a YouTube video, and eventually he is designing a D-Day universe using Minecraft. I don't even know if that's the right language because I don't play Minecraft, but he's bringing his learning into the gaming environment. Everything becomes like intertwined based on his interests, like so powerful. I don't even see the separation, right?
Yeah, my son actually, at the end of last year, he built a gaming computer. So he used, all of the skills that it takes to build a computer and taught himself, self-taught, how to build a computer, because he wanted a gaming computer and they're very, very expensive. And he said, well, I figured out that if I can build my own, then I can get everything I need. And if I earn half the money, will you guys pay the other half? And so it was a lesson in, how to save, how do we do the money, all of those things, plus building, and he's got so much pride and sense of accomplishment with that. So I feel like we have to find a way to just work that in to what what they want to learn about.
And that's the best place, right? Learning based on what they're interested in. So how old was your kid designing this computer?
13. Yeah, he just did that in December. Yeah.
That's incredible. And you will notice that, at least I noticed that when kids, they are really into something, they really lose track of time and the space. They're just like really into it, right? You have to remind them it's time to take a break. And then like I was thinking, oh wow, just a few years ago, you were like, oh, I don't want to go to school. But now he's like loving this so much, losing track of time and space.
Yeah, we have seen such a transformation in that way. Just, they ask questions that are very, very good that I don't know the answer to, right? And so when you ask, like, I don't know everything, we learn together. I don't know. Let's look for it. Let's look for the resources. Let's figure out how to answer your question, right? And so they're just constantly curious about, what about this? Well, what about that? And it makes for wonderful conversations in our home. And I think that's really where we have just seen such the benefit as a family. It's just so peaceful. It's so calm. We have conversations with our children all day, every day. And, I think in a world where parents and children have there's just this wedge and there's this, lack of understanding of each side. I think that when we can find some common ground and we can talk and have very great conversations, it just makes for a happy, peaceful environment for everyone, parents included.
Oh, we definitely see that, especially every day in the morning. It used to be World War III in the morning, right? Like time to get up, go to school.
Yeah.
Whatsoever. Now everyone is getting more sleep, which is really important. It is a lot more harmonious. It's just like so peaceful every morning. Yes.
It is. It is. Yeah, we don't really wake up with alarms if we can help it. And, we just kind of let our bodies kind of naturally wake when we're ready to get up. And with the boys, we do the same thing. Their teenage brains need a lot of sleep. Adolescents need a ton of sleep for this vast amount of brain development that's happening during this stage of life. And, so we just try to give them that good, long, restful sleep if we can. And it just makes for a happier household.
Amen. Amen. And wow, we have only about 10 minutes left. So here's another great question from Alice. Can homeschooling happen for families like us with parents who actually both work? So with Katie, she has, almost 20 years in the banking industry, and you left that, and now you are an entrepreneur, you are a financial coach. So how do you that's one of my questions. How do you balance everything? Do you think this is doable for families who have both, who have working parents?
Yeah, here's my motto: when there's a will, there's a way, right? And so I believe that when you feel called to do something, you find a way to make it all work. Mm-hmm. For us, could I have a traditional 8 to 5 job where I'm away from the home and then we come home at night? I do know homeschool parents that do that, right? And so I think that, yes, it can happen. For me, I needed to find the balance. Mm-hmm. I wanted to give 100% to homeschooling my sons. And I also want to have my own business and help and serve others in the financial industry. And so I have found a way and figured out a way how to marry the both of them. And, I think also there's the misconception that we're sitting in our curriculum room and we're doing, 8 hours of work a day. In all fairness, homeschool, depending on the age of your child, the actual time that you are working on formal education, curriculum, textbooks, all of that is about, again, depending on the age, 1 to 3 or 4 hours a day max. And 4 hours is going to be for your high school students. For my elementary age son, 2 hours, 2.5 hours. Some parents spend that on homework alone when they come home in the afternoons from working all day. So yes, I believe absolutely you can give your child the learning that they need a couple hours a day, a few hours a day, especially depending on the age. The challenge comes in is usually around childcare, right? They have to go to work, and what do you do with the kids all day? And so then that's where that thought is that have schools really become just glorified childcare for people who are working, right? For me, I'll tell you very honestly, we are making financial sacrifices for this decision. This started years ago when we felt kind of something was going on, and we made drastic lifestyle changes. We downsized our home. We simplified our life. We were growing less and less reliant on a second income, clearing debt. But it was all for something that, I feel like God knew was coming for us, which was to homeschool. So yes, I believe it can happen. I believe you very much can do both. It just requires a little bit of organization, some planning, and I think you can make it work if you want to.
Reminds me of another book. The title is like similar to this, which is like the best parenting is actually showing up. And the author talks about, you have to make a decision, sometimes maybe relocation to a less expensive city, but like having that time with your kids is so important. I love how you say glorified daycare. It is so true, right? Like so many parents, they just like outsource their own children's education to a school, and that is very dangerous. That's why like our kids are having so many problems nowadays compared to a few generations ago. So we only have a few minutes left. I definitely want to talk about curriculum. You have a really powerful article which I'm going to share in the comment section. You talked about curriculum, and so that is a common question that I got asked a lot, and parents are really struggling with. There's definitely no shortage of information. The problem is there's way too much information. So can you give us a quick overview of the different approaches to homeschool and curriculums, and what curriculum did you guys use?
Yeah, so there are several, and I guess you could call it a traditional style, which would be sort of like what you're used to in the public school, textbook, worksheets, those kind of more rigid resources would be one way to go. There are co-ops. So there are all over the country, there are homeschooling co-ops, various kinds of co-ops that you can join where parents actually help in leading classes. There's the Charlotte Mason method, which is actually the one that we use. It is Charlotte Mason was a British author in the late 1800s, and her method was more about using lively stories and books to teach reading and writing and social skills, and using nature and art and music to teach all of the other things. So it's kind of a combination of literature and walking in nature and learning, kind of having the child lead in that way. Some families do what's called unschooling. It's where they really have no curriculum at all, and whatever their children are interested in is what they jump on and learn about as a family or teach about. Where you may say, we're going to take soccer and we're going to look at soccer because you love it so much, and we're going to do a unit study about all of the subjects. We're going to learn about a soccer player. We're going to learn about math with using soccer. We're going to learn about geometry and use the geometric figures on the soccer ball to now teach geometry and where we see geometry in our everyday life. So that's an unschooling method, and that is actually becoming very, very popular. And again, it uses that child-led approach which if they're motivated, then they want to learn. So those are just a few, but yeah, I do have that article that I see that you put out there. And so it answers the question. But when parents ask me what curriculum should I use, my very first response is, how does your child love to learn? I think we need to become learners of our children. We need to learn what their, how they learn. I think it's really important. If you had have asked me that before I started homeschooling, I said I have no idea. I don't know if they're auditory, visual, kinesthetic. I don't know if they're spatial, if they need, I have no idea. So I had to first study my own children. I had to understand how they learned, how they received information. And then I thought to go after the curriculum that would match with that. The reason I chose the one that I chose was because I have a dyslexic son, and he's not really great at being able to take a story that he reads or is read to him and be able to write about it, to write a paper on it, to answer questions in a word bank. But he can tell you the story back. He can narrate back to you the story. He's a great storyteller. So I can test his knowledge and I can test his skills through narrating and conversation, which lends itself to a certain type of curriculum. We would not function well in a traditional textbook worksheet type of environment.
Yeah, and I think you just made so many great points, and one of them is just like, how do your children learn? I think many parents, like at least when I decided to homeschool my kids, I had no idea how my children learn. Just like you, I think many parents don't even ask that question. We just trust the school somehow magically can just figure out and customize, personalize the teaching. It doesn't work like that. So we follow even our two kids, and they each have a different approach. And we do a combination of unschooling, and we also use some like 70% unschooling, 30% curriculum. And like the unschooling approach is so powerful because you start with something that the kid is very interesting, and through that particular subject, you introduce math, physics, and literature, like social study, history, geography. It is so powerful because it starts with the kids' interest. So I really, really love that. But we also see the need that they need some curriculum. So you really have to, as you mentioned, Katie, do what works for your kids and first understand your children, and then kind of do what works for them. Yeah, for those.
Yeah, when we first came out, when I first pulled them out, we did what's called deschooling, which we didn't do school at all for several months. And that gave me the opportunity to really kind of explore and understand what we needed to do next. And so I tell people when they're making this transition, give everyone time. And again, I thought I wasn't doing enough. I thought I wasn't going to be enough. How in the world could I do this? And what I would say is that it takes time. It really just takes time to kind of just settle in. And if we'd have had this interview even a year ago, there was still a little bit of hesitation. And am I doing the right thing? I think we're always questioning that, because at the end of the day, I do feel a very personal responsibility for my kids' education. And, that's a heavy backpack to wear sometimes, but I feel like it's absolutely the right decision. And I can see the transition and the changes that have happened, I think, relatively quickly. And so we have no choice but to just keep going because it's working. So I'm happy to be able to share that with you.
Yeah, thank you so much. What a great interview. And also for those of you who are really interested in learning more about the unschooling approach, I have Dr. Peter Gray, who is a professor at Boston University or Boston College, coming on my show next month. And he's all about unschooling and really, really powerful, like free to learn, free to be. So resonated a lot with what Katie shared. So definitely stay tuned for that. So wow, we have only 1 minute left. Such an amazing conversation. I don't want to end this. So do share with us, where can people learn more about you? Have your website here, your social media, where's a good place for people to connect with you?
Definitely on katiegibbons.com. You can send a contact form and I will get that via email. Also on social media, I'm on Instagram at katiegibbons.co and LinkedIn as well. And so please, if you have any questions about homeschooling, let me know. Also, I am a financial coach. Financial literacy is really important. So we'll have to do that on another talk, maybe
I know,
where we talk about how to
it.
teach financial literacy to children, right? And so that's something that I am very passionate about teaching parents so that they can pass those really good money habits down to their children, because we can see that it would make generational changes, and the legacy that parents want to leave from a financial standpoint is really, really important. So anyway, please reach out. I'd love to chat. I do actually advise. I'm a parent advisor for homeschooling for a curriculum company. And so please find a way to reach out. I'd love to connect.
Yeah, totally. I mean, just one word about financial literacy is so important. Once you learn this, so you will have generational wealth as opposed to generational debt to pass to the next generation. So I'm definitely having you back for another live interview, talk about how to cultivate our kids and our parents, our own financial literacy. Yeah,
absolutely. I'll be looking forward to that.
Yeah. Anyway, thank you so much, everyone. Lots of great information. I totally agree. Thank you for being a part of this conversation. Always love to learn with you on every Friday. And so thank you. And big shout out to Katie for dropping so much value. Make sure check her out, connect with her on social media. And I hope to see you guys again next Friday or Saturday for some of you. Same time, same location for another fascinating conversation about education, discussing, debating, and disrupting education. Bye, everyone.
Bye. Thank you so much.